How's it, guys? This is Dayvy FPL and welcome back to another Fantasy Premier League video here on my channel. Now in this video we're going to be going over the top 5 beginner tips and ways you can improve your team for the upcoming season. I thought with less than 2 weeks till the game week 1 deadline where all our teams have to be finalized, I'd get this video out and I would cover tips rather than a tutorial or guide, as it's a bit more general and a bit more useful in my opinion. I think most of you will probably be computer savvy, so you can get around the user interface there, so maybe a tutorial or guide is a little bit redundant. However, you can ask down in the comments down below if you have any questions about FPL, and I'm sure whether it be myself or one of my other viewers will be happy to help you out. So we're going to be going over tips that most beginner players do. I can see this in my peers and my friends when they show me their FPL teams, and even in some FPL teams that have been sent to me. This is a learning environment, so any questions are good, and if you're making these mistakes, you don't have to feel shamed or embarrassed at all. This is simply the lifestyle of FPL. You have to start somewhere, and I'd rather you start now than in the season and then be caught up with all the fixtures and the chips and that kind of stuff. So we'll be going over some tips, and hopefully these tips can help improve your overall rank and win your mini leagues. Firstly, I wanted to go over who I am for those of you who might be new to the channel, or maybe were just seeking more information about me. My name is David, also commonly known as Dayvy FPL, and as you can tell by my name, I create FPL content. I started last season creating FPL content over here on YouTube, and it was the season I managed to finish with an overall rank of 22nd in the world out of 6.3 million players around about. So I'm hoping that my tips and information and how I play the game can hopefully make you into a better FPL manager. If you're new to FPL, I recommend you go down, I'll put my preseason playlist in the description, and you go and watch those videos. I cover a lot of points and thinking behind how I make my decisions and players and teams you should be looking at. Also recommend that you subscribe for future content, as I will be pumping out content from now till the end of the preseason. So we also have a community league over here on Dayvy FPL. It's called Dayvy vs the World. If you don't know what a league is, it's kind of a place where you can compete against other players, and this is a private league. It's my private league for our community over here on Twitter and YouTube, and the code to join it is BDFI35. Thanks to those of you who have joined it, I really appreciate it, and if you have not yet, you can simply enter this code and then you'll be joined. Now, before we get into the tips and what you've all been waiting for, I just want to offer an apology to those of you who joined our celebratory live stream Q&A yesterday. I unfortunately was not able to live stream as my upload speed has been completely fried since it's the end of the month. Luckily, the end of the month is nearby, and hopefully we can get that celebratory stream up soon and running. The celebration was us hitting 9,000 subscribers, so thanks to you, the viewers, again for supporting the channel and getting us to this milestone. The next milestone we probably want to hit is 10,000 subscribers, and I'm sure with your support we can hit it before that game week 1 deadline, which will be absolutely insane. So without further ado, let's get into the tips. Now, the first tip, and probably the most cliche one of a newer player, is that they have CDMs in their starting 11 or on their bench. I've seen this with a lot of my friends who bring me their drafts to look at. They'll usually have a player like Kante, Fernandinho or Matic in, and the main thinking behind having a CDM in your squad is they're pretty much very cheap and they play for a high quality team. For this video, I'll be using N'Golo Kante as my example, as he is pretty much the most popular pick and the most almost stereotypical pick of a newer player. We say this with N'Golo Kante as he comes in at 5 million, which is a lot cheaper than other Chelsea options, and because he plays for a top 6 side, most newer players think that that means points. However, in FPL and with the FPL rules, he's pretty much not guaranteed to get points. However, last season he did get 4 goals and assists, but that was a lot above his usual 1 goal and 3 assists or 1 goal and 2 assists. So I bring that down to Maurizio Sarri's style of play, where he pumped Kante up higher up the pitch and he was getting in the box a lot more. However, with Frank Lampard at that managerial position now, I'm sure we're going to be seeing Kante at his preferred CDM slot, where he's going to see a points drop quite a bit. But if you do want to have a player that's kind of guaranteed to start, you could opt for him, but I wouldn't have him in the starting 11 as a playing player for your FPL squads. Now, the main reason for this is that with the FPL rules set and point system, CDMs do not get a lot of points. There are other FPL variants where points are offered for tackles, pass percentage, and that kind of thing, but in FPL those are transferred to the bonus point system. However, goals and clean sheets are heavily dominated in that sector. So with your CDMs, you kind of offered 2 points or 3 points if they keep a clean sheet, and that is pretty much it. So if you want a player on your bench that kind of is guaranteed to get points if one of your starting 11 is injured, you can buy CDM. However, I would probably opt for a cheap alternative or an alternative around the same price that is more attacking from a promoted side. So as I said, the main reason is that players bring them in because they are cheap. So I would opt for a player from a promoted side because those are usually quite cheap, around the same 5 million mark. You can bring CDMs, as I said, but I would not recommend it, and I'm sure you'll be having a more successful season if you kind of leave them on the transfer list and don't bring them in. The second tip of the video is to squeeze budget out of your bench. What I'm saying by this is do exactly the opposite of what I have in this picture here. As you can see, we have a lot of money on this bench and we want that money in our starting lineup. Obviously, this is a massive exaggeration of what I'm talking about. No ways will you have Sterling, Robertson and Salah on your bench when you have cheaper alternatives in your starting 11. But what I'm saying about this is I've seen a lot of players that will think that you need 3 bench starting players that are over probably about the 5 million mark, and you can sub them in and out. Reduce your decisions by giving yourself benching headaches and kind of opt for some budget enablers that come in around the 4 million mark and the 4.5 million mark. You can watch a video that I created earlier where I said the top 5 budget enablers and opt for some of these players as they are likely to sometimes start some games and get you some points. Squeezing your budget out of your bench allows you to have the best starting 11 possible and will guarantee you more points. I do recommend, however, having a starting first bench player that will come on if any of your starting 11 are injured and that you can easily transfer out. Why I'm saying this is that if one of your starting 11 does get injured, you have a playing bench player that can sub in for them if you don't have any transfers available. It's important to kind of not have 2 playing goalkeepers that are very premium. An example of this would be probably Alisson and Edison. I would not have the 2 of them, as it's a complete waste of money to have 2 premium goalkeepers that you're going to be rotating when you could just have one of them with a budget second option and then put more money into your starting 11. So I would recommend you kind of have 1 bench player, but don't have an entire bench of massive premium options or even mid-range options. I would go very budget on this case. The third tip I'm going to be going over is that captaincy is the most important aspect of FPL. If you nail your captain every week, you're going to be nailing a great overall rank. That being said, with a captain, your points are doubled if you don't know, so it's incredibly important to choose a captain that is almost guaranteed to get a lot of points. I've put 3 examples here of captains throughout the season that will probably guarantee you a lot of points, that being Salah, Sterling and Kane. These are 3 premium options that come in as some of the most expensive players in FPL this season and will hopefully guarantee you a lot of points. It's also very important to look at the fixture that your captain is playing. On the screen we have Norwich and West Ham and Aston Villa, which are all great fixtures for these players. You can, however, captain a player against a stronger side, but I would recommend looking for a weaker alternative so that you can guarantee points. Salah last season was the highest point scorer and he has been for the past 2 seasons, so that's why I've opted for him, as he's a very safe option. However, Sterling and Kane should have great seasons as well. It's also important to rotate your captain if you feel so, and then you should pay attention to when the deadlines are so that you can get that captain change in. With captaincy options, if you do have 2 options that are kind of good, you should opt for maybe the most popular one that everyone's going for, as this will offer you some leeway if that captain does not do well. You can see these captain polls over on Twitter, or sometimes they have them on various websites, and then you can kind of adjust your captaincy decision to those. However, your captaincy is your own choice, so I would go for a player that you think will do well. However, I wouldn't go too differential, especially if you're new to FPL. Now, the second last tip is quite a weird one to describe. It's to try and not have supporter bias. I will use myself as an example. I support Liverpool, but that does not mean that I'm going for Liverpool players every single game week, captaining them and bringing them in my side to the maximum of 3 players. On the screen, I've used the example of being a Manchester United fan and having 3 of their defenders. Now, last season, Man United did not have a great defense at all, so if you had this defense, you probably would be getting no points. But that, as I said, it's a little bit hard to describe. As for when I use myself as an example, I had Salah and Mane at the start of last season, and they did incredibly well. So maybe if I wasn't a Liverpool supporter, I wouldn't have had them in. However, I was ready to bring in their rivals, Manchester United players like Pogba and Man City players like Sterling, as soon as they hit form. And that is why I did so well. So I would not let your supporter bias make your decisions and continue to make them, as then you are kind of blocking yourself off from potential points. However, there are people that find it a lot more enjoyable to bring players that they support in and kind of leave players that are rivals away from their squad. This can be seen as if your player in your FPL team scores for your and is a rival. You kind of are celebrating, and some people don't like this, but I recommend you try not to have supporter bias when playing FPL, as you'll get more points probably. Now, the last tip we are going to be going over, and in my opinion is the most important point, is to stay updated with FPL. This can be seen with the deadlines. I can't tell you how many times I've had friends and people over on Twitter and on the YouTube comments tell me that they've missed the deadline and the captain they wanted to put has absolutely gone off, and their captain that they have in their team has been benched and will come on for a 1-point appearance. You got to pay attention to the deadlines, and especially to the Friday ones. Since I've been playing FPL and been watching football, the deadlines are usually on a Saturday. However, they sometimes creep in on a Friday, and then most people are unprepared as they are used to that Saturday deadline. You could also miss the Saturday deadline due to oversleeping, so I'd recommend you setting an alarm and just overall being aware of when the deadline occurs. You can make your transfers on a Friday night if you know you're going to be missing the Saturday deadline, but I would overall keep updated with the deadline so that you can make those captain changes, make those bench players and bench rotation swaps, and overall kind of adjust your team to how you want to play. Another thing and another pointer that I wanted to point out is that you have to keep updated with injuries and injuries to your FPL squad. You can do this by following Ben Dinnery on Twitter. He's my favorite injury kind of alerter, as he offers us great news and updated news on players' injuries, as well as offering expected comebacks and deadlines for them on their injuries. He also has a website called premierinjuries.com that I recommend you go check out. You can go to the injury table and get an entire list of the Premier League squads and what injuries they have. I'm saying this as you don't want to make a transfer when you're bringing in an injured player and you are unaware of it. I also recommend this as you can transfer players out if they are out for an exceeded amount of time, and sometimes the FPL injury alerts aren't the most updated and are sometimes misleading. So if you do stay updated, as I said, it's probably the most important thing. You will be doing very well, and you'll be beating the casual players of the game who make transfers every now and again and usually miss their injured players and then have to have bench fodder come on in their place who score no points. So I hope you've enjoyed this top 5 beginner tips video. I hope it's been an informative video and a positive experience for you, even if you have been playing FPL for a long time. I know that I was guilty of making some of these mistakes even into my second season, so hopefully you guys can get a great start, especially if you're new to FPL, and have a step above the rest, which may be your mini leagues, your friends, or just your overall rank in general. Please like the video if you did enjoy it and it was informative, and I recommend that you subscribe to the channel if you're new or are returning and have not subscribed yet. This will allow your videos to be popped up on your subscriber feed, and also hit that bell if you want notifications of when I go live or when I upload a video. We are hitting that 10,000 spot soon, so hopefully it can be before game week 1, and any support for the channel is appreciated. But otherwise, I'm going to be signing off. This has been Dayvy FPL, and I'm out. Cheers, bye.